Hi, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. And this is the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast.
This podcast is all about taking action and creating that badass business abundance and life that you want.
Where we share stories, laughs, wins, and epic fails to show you the whole picture of the entrepreneurial journey.
It's not just unicorns and rainbows, people.
Jump on and follow us through this raw and witty roller coaster,
where we get down and dirty and go behind the scenes of life and entrepreneurship.
Get on it,
get over it,
and get after it.
Hey, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. Welcome to the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast. We are jumping right back into our sales discussions. We've had so many amazing interviews with sales professionals talking about sales, and our second book, The Pursuit of Badasserie, the sales edition, Badass Business Sales Solutions. And we have another sales topic to discuss with you today, Jesslyn and myself.
Yeah, I'm super excited. By the way, Amanda, I miss just being with you. I mean, I loved all of our guests. Like, we got some great knowledge, but it feels good to be back in the seat.
The two of us making podcasts as we go. Oh, just the two of us.
We have a lot of fun. All right, Amanda, what is our subject today?
So today we're going to talk about all the sales tools we have. And this podcast has stemmed from some conversations we've had with clients and people in our sales masterclass and the sales course that we have now, talking about the tools that you have for sales and whether or not you're actually using the tools that you know, and whether or not you actually know the tools at all. Because sales is more than just give me your money. I have a thing. So much more than that. So
much more.
Have been answering all these questions about, number one, what is the sales process? Like, what do you do in sales? What are the tools that you have? And then how do you implement them in a way that feels authentic to you, that feels natural, and will actually tip the scale and send that little arrow up on all your graphs, which is what we ultimately want in any sales environment.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's interesting. Everything interests me. I love human dynamics. A couple of things here. First off is, like, you know, in today's age where we have social media and like everything's blasted and you are just overstimulated, sales has slightly changed. And so a lot of people feel that they're doing sales by just commenting on a post or just putting their website out there. And that is not, I'm sorry, but that's not really like the traditional sales, which we do need. And Amanda and I also talk a lot about like the proactive, the active, and the reactive sales positions and what that looks like and how that looks. However, at the end of the day, and I am guilty of this, and I love sales. We just wrote a damn book about sales. Our podcast has been about sales. However, with everything that's been going on in my life, if I'm actually calling myself out, I'm not doing the sales that I should be doing. I'm not having the conversations. I'm not following my own damn processes that I know works time and time again because I'm being distracted. And so first off, I just want to admit, like, call myself out, knock myself off the pedestal that maybe some of you might put me on or Amanda on, because I saw Amanda agreeing with me, and say, okay, so what does that mean? Like, because if your first response to somebody asking you, you know, about, hey, what's your sales game like? Or, hey, you should come to this training, or, hey, what about this book? And you're like, no, I know how to do sales. I've been doing sales my whole life. Then you probably need to be in there. And the reason why is because you already have a wall up around sales, thinking and sitting on your high horse. So we're going to talk a little bit around that. And this is not judgment or pointing fingers. Some of you are doing bomb.com, and kudos to you. However, we can always learn more. We can always reconnect back to the basics. We can always sink further into our sales and be more proactive where we need to be proactive versus reactive. And I think that's a great place to start, Amanda. Why don't you break it down, proactive versus reactive? I think we've said this before in a podcast, but let's revisit that.
Yes, because we're all about lifetime learning. And Lynn and I will really admit, we've been doing sales for collectively like 50 years. It's a ridiculous amount of time that we've been doing sales. And both of us have been self-admittedly slacking like nobody's business in the sales department, because just some days you're going to be better at sales, some days you're not. That's just the sales game. But both of us will admit readily that in the last, I'm going to say, I don't know, 2 months, I've been less on my sales game, but also I've been distracted with things that were higher on my priority list. So you make that choice. And if you're in the solopreneur sphere, that choice is a bigger choice to make because it's just you. So if you choose to step away from your sales game, you are choosing to step away from your business in some ways.
It's a greater impact.
Yeah, and the impact changes. I mean, it just, that dynamic changes. So speaking specifically about that proactive, active, reactive, I was recently talking with one of my clients, and they, of course, know all the things about sales, and they've been in sales for forever. In their heads, like, oh, I've been in sales for years and years and years. I know what I'm doing. I have my system. I have this, whatever. But when we broke down what in their system was working and what wasn't, it came down to they were good at sales, but only in the reactive front. And what I mean by that is they had a brick and mortar, and the only time they made sales was when somebody walked in the door. And when someone walked in the door, they had their scripts. They knew what they were going to say. They understood the dynamic and like the power plays and just how to convey their product. And they understood target market. They understood that basis of what their sales process was, but only in a reactive front. So they were only able to sell if someone was coming to them. And if somebody is walking in your door or clicking on your link or scheduling a phone call with you, they're probably already mostly ready to buy. They're probably already in your sales process or have been in that nurturing phase of your process, or your marketing has been good enough that they're in that place. So the actual selling to them is less difficult than when you're reaching out proactively and you're like what I would consider like cold calls, like when you're trying to reach out and when some of those more proactive and active attempts are being made, you're reaching out in a way that hasn't been nurtured yet. Whereas a lot of times when you have somebody walking into a brick and mortar, they already have like, oh, I saw that shirt in the window. I want that shirt. I'm going to come in and buy that shirt. And then you might sell them the shirt and like a pair of matching bracelets or something. So the sale there is easier because they've already come in wanting something from you specifically in your storefront. So in that respect, their sales game was great. But when we were looking at this specific client, they had no system in place at all for proactive and active sales techniques. They had no way to reach out, and they didn't have like any kind of CRM, any kind of way to nurture people in their system. It was really just, they're going to walk by my storefront, they're going to see that shirt, they're going to come in and buy it. And that's great, but they're leaving money on the table. You're leaving money on the table.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I was just thinking of a story. So I just got to a resort to write a book, and I'm settling in the first day, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna order a cocktail, only 99 baht, which is like, oh, 250, 280. I know, for a cocktail, for a mojito. I was like, I'll order one, and I'm done with the mojito. And this is there are some things that are a bit cultural here, that it's a very reactive kind of environment anyway. And I said it, and I was like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm going to have another one. So I said it, set the empty glass down. I'm still eating, like I still have food. I'm still eating, and it's sitting there. And I was like, okay, I want one. And I don't see a waiter. And I'm like, I want one. And I don't see a waiter. And then finally I see one, and I like call them over. And not that I have a lot of drinks, but I had a second one. However, so that was reactive. If somebody was proactive, I probably would have had 3 drinks, just because like I was settling into the day. I almost didn't get the second drink. And so they left money on the table because they weren't being proactive or engaged. And I think that that's the other aspect to this, is like a reactive sales mind is a very complacent, passive sales experience, where a proactive sales mind is a forward thinking, it is like a hungry sales, it's active, like it's doing action, right? It's being aware. And the thing is like you both are good. And when you have them combined, it really does make for a stronger sales process. However, when we sit strictly, I'll say proactive, it can exhaust us, right? We don't have anything. We're always looking for the next. We're not necessarily nurturing and sitting back and being able to like allow things to happen too. With the reactive and the complacency, we leave money on the table, but also even in the reactive state, so that brick and mortar, there comes a time where if you sit too long in the reactive state, you actually can like make it seem like people like you don't want their business. And so it's a really interesting dynamic between the proactive and the reactive sales, not only actions, but state of mind. And I think that one thing that I love about, and Amanda and I were joking about this a couple of weeks ago, and we've had a few things on our plate, but we're about to get into like some proactive sales approaches. And I'm actually excited and nervous because it's been a while since I've been super proactive in a way that we're going to do. And what it does though, is it reinvigorates me. It brings life. And yes, it could be scary to a lot of you. I understand it is scary. You still do it in your own way, but it brings this certain like, even energetic flow. You're telling the universe, if we go woo-woo, which I know always jokes about my woo-woo side, but if we go woo-woo, the second I start being proactive about shit, the sales stuff, like at the end of the day, I am energetically saying, I am ready to receive. I want this money. I want these clients. I need, I am open, right? When we're being reactive, then it's not the same feeling, and you don't create the same energy, the same buzz, the same even energy within yourself. Like you see, I'm getting all hyped up and excited about it. It's because I'm talking about being the proactive. When I'm talking about reactive, I feel a little bit more docile. And so at the end of the day, both are great. However, like ask yourself in the mindset and in your activities, are you being more proactive or reactive? And I know we went down this rabbit hole. We want to talk about the other parts of this as well, but I think it's really important.
Yeah. And I love that you talk about that internal fire, because I absolutely feel that way whenever I'm getting proactively involved in a sales process. And it's not every time I'm like all the time proactive, because you're right. That's flipping exhausting. It's exhausting to be that proactive. But like, let's say, for example, you have a new product or service that's about to come out, and you proactively are reaching out to clients who you think might be interested in that. And then you're going to talk it up, and it's going to actually help you with your sales process, because you're already like pre-thinking out some of the questions that are going to come, some of the things that people are going to ask, the features they're going to ask about, the benefits they're going to ask about, and you're talking it up and getting used to talking about it before it's even a thing yet. So I love reaching out to people proactively about products that didn't even exist yet, and getting them all hyped up, and that their excitement is infectious, and they're waiting for it to drop, and you're so excited, rather than just sitting back and waiting for them to hear that we have this product and then come to me because they're excited and already kind of pre-sold. Which marketing is good, because obviously the point of marketing is to get people excited and coming to you, among other things. But I would much rather seek out those people that I know are on target for that guy. I know are my target market, that I know are going to be stoked just as much as I am, or at least be cheerleaders enough that they're going to start talking about it in a way that's going to help me sell even more down the line.
Yeah. And Amanda doesn't mean just in her intimate audience. She means in the target audience. So it's not, she's just like going after her friends and family over and over and over again. So I just want to clarify that, especially for those of you who might be doing that. Like, it is expanding that outside of that. Another aspect to what we wanted to chat about today was definitely around just because you have the tools doesn't necessarily mean that you're using them. And this is or the knowledge. And I know, and I know Amanda's going to crack up, like there are times where I'm sitting on a call with a client or a potential client, and they're like, and I asked them about their sales process, and they're like, oh yeah, I have a sales process. It's great. I'm very active. And then I was like, okay, let's decipher that. Like, let's break that down. And they're, where they thought that they were doing 15 hours a week on sales, they were only doing maybe 3 hours a month on sales, and they're still trying to defend it. And I'm like, why did you want to hire me? Or why did you hire me? Because you wanted to increase your sales, because you needed to bring in profit. You are hemorrhaging money and not making enough. So we can take away some of the hemorrhage, but you need to bring in more income. And so obviously you're not doing the sales game. You're not using the tools, or something's a disconnect, and maybe you're not playing the right target market or whatever that is, but it blows my mind sometimes. And so before you react with, oh no, my sales game is good, or I have sales, my favorite was when I was the CEO of the global company where we taught like how to build referral relationships and create this like essentially strategic alliances that help feed you. And one of our top producers like, I don't have a sales process. I just get business by referrals. Like that's the other aspect. No, you still are doing sales and you're leaving money on the table. So at the end of the day, like, I don't know if that like drives you insane, Amanda, when you have people that respond to you like that. I'm like, yeah, wait,
Does it no,
did you not hire me for this?
Crazy. It drives me crazy. And it's happened a couple of times, even recently. And it's been where you just kind of, you're listening to them, you're actively listening, you're looking at the numbers, you're hearing the words coming out of their mouth, and then you're looking at the numbers. You're like, are we looking at the same spreadsheets? Like, are we looking at the same set of books? Because you're telling me that everything is amazing. And in the next breath saying, but we really need to increase profits and we really need you to help us do this. And why is XYZ falling apart every single month? And why is it this feast and famine? Ew. The common denominator. We've talked about the common denominator. Sometimes you got to take that. It's a hard thing to swallow. However, having the tools, like knowing what your target market is, doesn't mean that you're necessarily marketing to them. Knowing what your USP is doesn't mean you're using it or effectively or using it at all. Having a sales script that you have worked on with someone and that you feel is effective, maybe it's not tying back to what you're actually selling. Maybe it's not tying back to a place that people can go to buy things. Maybe your sales page, if it's an online scenario, maybe it's not, the button's not there, and there's nothing that clicks through, and you're losing people once they get all the way through the sales process. They're at the page to hit buy now, and then something falls apart. So there are a lot of things that can be not working. And if you don't know what your system is, and you don't know where those disconnects are, and you haven't really looked at it objectively, what are you doing? Let's talk.
Yeah. And usually, and this is, again, not a dig, this is our observation, and also calling ourselves out. Like there are times where I'm like, yeah, well, it's been a while since I've done this, but yeah, I'm doing sales, whatever. And I kind of look at my numbers and look at everything that I'm doing. I'm like, no, I was screwing off, and like, or I wasn't putting in the effort, or I wasn't following my process. And so at the end of the day, just because you have the tools doesn't mean that you're using them the way that would enhance your sales game. And so what Amanda and I really just wanted to bring light to this and ask you, like, okay, are your numbers where they need to be or where you want them to be? And is it taking the amount of time and process that you really want it to be? So are your time worth value? So are you getting the results that you want, and in the time and we'll say energy that you want to get that in? And if that answer is yes, great. Then you're probably doing a good job. We would just say, review your sales process, monthly, minimal quarterly, just to check in and say, okay, what went right? What went wrong? But if you're wanting more income, if you are feeling exhausted or energetically drained, or are lacking the process, or just kind of stumbling through and allowing sales to come to you, then you really need to take a moment and actually take a hard look at your sales process first, and then put some proactive sales time in your calendar. And that would be a challenge for me, for you, or from us for you, is like, you know what, once you've looked at your process, like, Then put 30 minutes in next week. 30 minutes. Just start with 30 minutes next week of proactive sales. That means outreach. You are outreaching to people. It could be people already in your funnel. It could be your current client base that you're just upgrading and letting them know. But like, start that proactive movement after you've really like looked at the tools that you have, dust off the tools that you need to dust off, tweak the ones that you need to tweak or recalibrate them, and then start actually applying them. And I'm telling you, if you do this consistently and do minimal, I would actually suggest an hour, because once you get into the role of it, but once you, and really when I was doing sales before, I had it 2-hour chunks just because, but that's me. I'm not saying go that far. I'm just saying if you could start with 30 minutes, but if 30 minutes doesn't seem like enough, like you want to get to a point where it feels a bit stretchy. So make it an hour. I would say no more than 3 hours in a bucket, because you kind of lose your momentum and your steam. 2 hours to me seems like a sweet spot, but you have to find you do you, boo, and just start applying those tools, because just because you have them, just because you've had experience. And it's funny, I was just watching, I love cooking shows. I was just watching a new cooking show with Alex Granashelli. I can never say her name properly. Granashelli. Anyway, and she's like, a cook or as a chef, we're only good as our last dish. And I remember this, like in sales, like they don't give a shit what you did last month when I was in like quota hitting. Yeah. And they didn't care. You're only as good as your last sale. Like, no, you're only as good as your next sale. That's it. And I'm not saying be hardcore and all, like, Wall Street Journal, whatever that movie was with the
Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, whatever. But like really start digging in.
And I would add to that, for those of you who have been in business for a while, this isn't for the people who necessarily started your business last week. It's a little bit different. If you've been in business for a while and you haven't revisited your sales process recently, I'm looking at you, kid. I need you to go back and take another look, because even if you feel like it's working, you're doing okay, and you're like, I'm paying the bills, I've made my 6 figures, like I'm doing good. The revisiting of that sales process isn't necessarily just because you want to make more money or because something is broken. It might just be to see, are you leaving a huge chunk of money on the table? Because what's going to scale you from, making $5,000 a month to making $20,000 a month isn't necessarily more clients or a higher price point or something. It could be just it could be those things, but it could be a small break in your sales process that you're not seeing because you haven't reviewed it in a while, and you're leaving chunks of money like 5, 1,000, 10,000 that it doesn't seem like a lot because you're still doing fine, but it could make all the difference if you haven't revisited your sales process in a while. So if you aren't revisiting your sales process, and again, I think, Lynn, you said once a month. I usually do it once a quarter, depending on how well the business is doing. Like if it's,
yes,
obviously, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But still revisit it and just take a look, just check in, because there's no such thing as a system you set once in your business and never look at again. It just, I know that sounds amazing, but unless you have a person who you've put in place or something, even the AI stuff, even the stuff that's automated, you still have to check occasionally. Just make sure everything's running the way it's supposed to. Make sure some like new update in the software didn't bounce something out, or there's always things. So
always,
even if your system is going well, please take a look back. So 30 minutes to an hour working on your sales process actively. I like to leave at least an hour because, life. And if you haven't taken a look at your sales process and the steps that you have in it and your CRM and how things are moving, just take a little, use one of those hours to just dive into that, because you could be leaving large chunks of money on the table.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. We can't wait to hear all about your sales activity. Leave us a message, a testimonial, share this podcast with somebody who you feel needs to hear this message today. Amanda?
And of course, we are all about sales. We are all about action. If this has helped you out and you want more from us, check out our book, check out our sales course. We would love to see you and ask your questions. We'd love to answer them.
Absolutely.
Again,
Let us know what you need. All right. Get after it. All right, everyone. It's not enough to just listen.
Now you've got to put it into action.
We are so excited to see what you do next.
If you enjoyed our show, please leave us a review on iTunes.
And to find out more about what we're doing, visit us at thepursuitofbadasserie.com.